Hey everybody, this is Shot, bringing you a feature comparison between two of my favorite AR style PCCs, pistol caliber carbines. And both of these platforms are something I like because they're both good examples of what you can get from with an complete lower, straight from the manufacturer. And they both have a patented last round hold open built into the lowers. I like both these platforms quite a bit. I have two FX-9s and a new Foxtrot mic. This is my latest addition to the collection. They both have a different way of solving a problem, and I like both solutions. There's things I do like about some and better than the other, and I'll talk about a little bit of that. But I want to just kind of walk through features just so you can see some of the key differences between these platforms. I think that both these guns get less publicity than they deserve. A lot of people talking about conversions that you can do on more of a standard AR to convert them to 9mm. I like the idea of engineering the mag well specifically for 9mm instead of putting a conversion kit on it. And I think both these companies have done a good job of solving some of those magwell issues that come with converting an AR to 9mm. But first off, on features, let's talk about the last round hold open. On the FX-9 from Freedom Ordnance, they handle this last round hold open. Sorry, get this in camera with a little hinge. So you can see up here on the front, the mag stop pushes up on this lever here, which then pushes the bolt stop there, holds the bolt open. So it's just got a pivot rod inside underneath here. And this one's internal, so then they have a little cover over that rod to just kind of keep dirt and stuff out of it. That's their way of solving it. I'll get to this feed ramp in a minute. But let's look at the way the last round hold open is set up on the FM-9 from Foxtrot mic. Their rod is external on the outside of the lower. Let's just turn this around and look at the back. So you can see when the mag comes up, it pushes up on this guy, and he moves straight up and down. And then he pushes up on a little lever on this side, and to get this whole assembly to rotate, which brings up the bolt stop there. So very similar action. This one's kind of external. I suppose this could maybe have an issue with getting dirt and grime in there and stopping it from working. I've yet to beat on it enough to really test how well that does when it's really dirty and grimed up. But either way, soot. So this one would probably not have issues with soot. Maybe would have issues with dirt from the outside. This one, building up soot from use, could probably start to foul it up a little bit. And I have actually had it. I've had this for a while. I've run several thousand rounds through this, and I have had a few issues with it starting to get a little sticky when I haven't cleaned it for a while. So, and theirs doesn't have the straight up and down cam. It just pushes straight over on it. And I haven't had any issues with this not working when I get to the end of the mag. The last round stays open. It's pretty reliable. I think the only times I've ever had an issue were with a particular mag, those Korean mags that they don't fit in the well very well. So I don't really have those anymore. I've gotten rid of my Korean mags. But everything else seems to work just fine. I have not tried the Korean mags in this one. Got rid of those long before I picked this up. But so far, this has performed really nicely also. So I'm pretty confident in this engineering, a different way of doing it, but both, fantastic solution to the last round hold open problem. Another thing on here, the mag release. This has got a much bigger mag release button, and it just has a little bit better spring. I think it grabs onto the mag a little better than the FX-9. The FX-9 though is still pretty slick. This one I tend to have to push it a little bit harder to get it to pop, but it grabs it, and it's just fine. I think they're both pretty well engineered. The FX-9 has a right-handed safety lever, pretty standard little thing. That's fine. It works great. This one, the FM-9, comes with an ambi safety lever, both sides. I like, oh, in camera, sorry. I like that. I think it's great. I'm never going to use this. Maybe I can see a rare situation where I would need to use left-handed, but if I'm, you know, having somebody out at the range with me that's you know, left-handed, maybe that's cool for them. Also, you can see a big difference between the trigger guard. This has a lot of room in there for your finger. I'm not sure whether that's a great thing or not, but I tend to like that, more room. This one is just fine. It's still got plenty of room. So, you know, with the mag wheel being smaller, they've just allowed for more room to, you know, increase the size of the trigger guard. But both to me are just fine. Another thing I kind of like is the more vertical mag well on the FM-9. So dropping free is just fine. Of course, most of what I have is these EFTs, so they just drop free from everything. This one, it tends to sit at a more of an angle, which has to kind of slide out, kind of sideways to come out. Still, I haven't had any issues with stuff dropping free, except for those Korean mags that I was talking about. Next thing up is a big difference on the charging handle. Of course, this has what seems like a standard charging handle, but you guys with the FX-9s know that this is a much shorter charging handle, and you can't put a standard charging handle in here. And that's another key difference here on the upper and lower. This upper-lower combo is a ½ an inch shorter on the front and ½ an inch shorter on the back from a standard AR, which seems great for 9mm. You don't need that much movement. You're not handling a big rifle round, so why have such a big action? That makes sense to me, and that's fine. You couldn't put another BCG in here. You'd have to use their BCG. You can't put another charging handle in it. You have to use their charging handle, which is fine. On this one, this is a standard size upper and lower. You could put a different BCG in here. The position of the ejector port is different, so I definitely could not use a BCG from the FX-9 in this, even if it was the same length, because the direction of the ejector is at an angle. This one is, you can see, pretty straight out the side, and on the FM-9 it sits at a little bit of an angle. So if I can get that to focus on it. Sits at a little bit of an angle, so it goes up and out a little bit more. But the differences are very slight, so very similar action on both of them. Let's see, what's another difference here? The trigger on the stock trigger on the FM-9 has a much shorter reset. Let me see if I can get this to reset for us. You can see it's a pretty tight trigger. Of course, I did a little polishing on the trigger mechanism because it was a little scrapey when I first got it. Kind of scraped a little bit, especially on the reset. So right here, when I let go, it scraped when I let that go. And I just polished the surface where that connects, and that's pretty nice now. Of course, I found with both Foxtrot mic and with Freedom Ordnance, there's a little finish work I think they could both do on the product before they ship them out the door to make them, you know, really a lot nicer. And it's just a little bit of fine touch on some surfaces that would make a big difference. Another big difference between these two, and this is something that I really didn't like about the Freedom Ordnance, and I had to solve this problem. I was getting weird feed problems where the round would rock up. It'd rock up or rock down coming off this feed ramp. So if you look here, this feed ramp, one of these surfaces, I had to polish this because the round's kind of stuck here. So I polished that. I got some polishing putty and my Dremel out, and I just polished that up really good. And that seemed to solve the problem. Also, let me see if I can get a shot of this with my light. The opening to the chamber right there was really rough, and I polished that surface so the round would kind of slide in there better, and that seemed to make a big difference. The other thing I had to do, I showed this in another video, but the other thing I had to do was polish some surfaces where the round interacts with the front of the BCG on the FX-9. Once I did that, one other thing I did to the FX-9, sorry, to get this to work was I put a much heavier buffer in that. That buffer they ship is way too light. This is just a 5.5 ounce. I've heard other people putting 6 and 7 ounces in there and having them work great, but slowing that action down a little bit helps quite a bit with those feed issues. And this thing has pretty much eaten everything I feed it once I got those things polished up. I have, mostly what I do at the range is, these just standard FMJs. But I also have run a bunch of hollow points through it. Something I keep in it for home defense is these guys here. These are seismic ammo, 185 grain 9mm. Pretty cool hollow points. They're about $1 a piece. I think, well, and right now they're probably more than that. They're probably $1.40 a piece right now. I think you can get a 21 round box for $29. Seismicammo.com. I'm not sponsored by them in any way. I just really like the product. And it's really interesting, the kick. Of course, we're just dealing with 9mm, so what's kick on an AR, but this has kind of a punch, and this is more like a shove. This has a slower burning powder in it that burns through the length of the barrel, and they recommend you not shoot these through a barrel shorter than 7 inches. This is your standard, Plinken ammo for 9mm, but yeah, I'm definitely not going to be unloading these at the range. Too much money for that right now. But another issue I have with the FX-9, so the feed ramp round comes off the ramp. Let me just put a magazine in here. You can see the round sits a little high for the ramp, and then if you look down inside here, let me try to get the light here better. There's kind of a gap where it has to go down in there about a ½ inch, a little bit more than a ½ inch, to get from the ramp to the chamber. And the bolt has to kind of, as the bolt's moving forward, it has to kind of float the bullet forward, float the round forward to get it into the chamber. And it can rock up and down. If the BCG doesn't grab it right, the bullet can kind of tip. And so I think this is not the best engineering. Also, you can see how high the round sits in that magwell. To me, if Freedom Ordnance just eliminated the feed ramp completely and extended the barrel back another ½ inch, maybe even shortened the BCG another, a little bit more to make it fit for theirs, I think the action on this would be way more reliable. I think it would be a much better product. If they're worried about weight, you can always add a weight to the back of this, to the back of the BCG, or you could just add a bigger buffer. And that would, to me, that would be a much better engineering of that action. Of course, I'm not a gunsmith, so you guys can comment about my ridiculous opinion on that below. That'll be a fun discussion. But the FM-9 from Foxtrot, let's see if we can get a focus on this, is basically set up the way I'm talking. So you can see that there's no gap. It doesn't go in there half an inch. It's right flush with the opening there. And you can see the distance between the ejector port and the front of the upper is, you know, pretty small. Where here, it's almost twice that distance. So even though the FX-9 is shorter, it seems like there's too much room going on here. Maybe they just need to make the ejector port a little bigger. Of course, you can see the size difference between the ejector ports. Let's see if we can get that in camera. The ejector port on the FM-9 is a little bigger than on the FX-9. But this is still smaller than a standard AR, so you know, we're only dealing with 9mm. You don't need a big ejector port. But to me, interesting differences in engineering. I think the BCGs are pretty comparable in quality. A little bit different engineering. They've got this kind of cam wheel to help roll through the cam where the ejector runs. That seems fine. This one is just more like a normal gas block on a standard AR, but it obviously doesn't have the port for the gas block. It's just getting pushed back. This only gets interacted with the charging handle, and which brings us to the charging handle. Again, I talked about the charging handle on the FX-9, kind of standard, but the FM-9 has this forward charging handle here. Of course, it's really light because the bolt isn't in, but it just takes. Let me see if I can get a shot of this in the light. Get a right angle there. Definitely not a videographer. Yeah, see that rod goes back in there and pushes the BCG back to charge the next round. So because there's no gas tube, let's just use that for our charging handle. Pretty cool engineering, I think. One thing I think there's an issue with this is that if you don't have something on your Picatinny rail and you're doing this bare hand, it's gonna gouge up your finger pretty good. So I wouldn't do this without something on there or gloves. So you can see there's some great advantage to this in one way, but a disadvantage in another. One of the things I like about this, let me seat this on the lower. Just the ergonomics of it. This to me is a much more natural action than reaching back up here and having to pull, you know, back really tight on the standard charging handle. I just think it's a more comfortable position. So this has certainly some pros and cons to having a forward charging handle. They also have a model with a flip out charging handle that gives you a little bit better bite. And I think I could avoid the knuckle, you know, gouging up my knuckles if I had a flip out charging handle. One of the things I found with both companies, it's a little hard to get parts. I think it's easier to get parts from Freedom Ordnance than it is from Foxtrot mic. Foxtrot mic is a little hard to get a hold of, but they have partnerships with like Primary Arms that I think is pretty good to work with them. But I haven't been able to find a place where I can buy that flip out charging handle. So anyway, and back here where the charging handle would normally be, instead of having that little notch, they just have this cover that flips down, kind of a dust cover, snaps in place there, where you can pull the BCG out. So yeah, just BCG comes out right there, and then drops in like that, and away you go. Now you can kind of see the action with the spring. So I like that a lot. It affects where you can put other furniture on your gun, where you're going to put your light, that kind of stuff. This definitely has a fixed position. So, it is ambidextrous. You can take this off and flip it around and put it on the other side. So if you wanted to have a left-handed charging handle on the side, this will do that for you. It's pretty simple. Let's see, what other differences do we have here between the two? I do like the way the grip, you interact with the grip on the FM-9 better, the Foxtrot mic. You can put your standard, ducktail kind of grip on here. I had a grip from Magpul that I like the feel of it. I like the angle of it. I prefer a more straight up and down grip. But the one that felt the best for me had the dovetail on it, and I actually dremeled this off to get it to fit. It's more like a AK kind of setup. But I prefer this. I can get my hand up in there and seat it a little tighter here. And this is a little more comfortable to work with. Of course, this one, I think this is a Battle Link. I'm forgetting. But this is a little bit steeper than the Magpul. And so I definitely prefer this. And I've got, these, I'm 6'8", this giant fingers. So I want a fatter grip. So I like this one better for me also. Of course, this is totally personal preference. And I think that's really the biggest difference between the two. Let's just take a look at, how the magazine sits in the magwell. So here you can see with these EFTs, there's a little bit of play there on the FX-9. It's about the same play. They're very similar to each other. So I would say you have a very similar fit. They're not like super tight. Of course, those Korean mags, they were really tight. You have to really push them in, and they didn't drop free. Your standard 33 round Glock mags, they fit a little tighter than the EFTs, but I like these much better. Of course, that's a 40 rounder, so 40 round happy stick. Who can argue with that? Of course, argue below if you want to. And I think that's the biggest real functional differences between the two. You decide which ones you like better, or whether you don't like them at all. There's a few things I put on that I really like, that I put on both. I really like the Battle Link Minimalist stock. I've done it on both. I've got my paracord little wrap on this one. I haven't done it on this one. I'm just still deciding whether I want to. Probably will, but I just kind of like how lean this one is. And I like my paracord wrap on the front here too, on the FX-9. So two guns, I really like them. I have the same kind of low end, mid-range, $50 red dot on there. These are Dagger Defense. They do just fine for me. I think that the glass on them is not super durable. So I think if I ended up dropping this in the dirt and dropping it on some hard surface, I could probably break the glass on that. But they both hold their zero pretty well, so I'm pretty happy with them. They take that standard, disc battery, and they both co-locate really well with the standard Magpul iron sights. So that's done great. Iron sights work great. Red dot works great. It's pretty accurate at normal ranges you would expect this to be accurate at. I definitely like the trigger out of the stock trigger on this much better. They do have an upgraded trigger that Foxtrot mic offers, and the mechanics of it look very similar. It's silver colored instead of black, but I'm suspicious that the only difference between the upgraded trigger and this is some finish work. And again, argue with me below if you'd like. I might be wrong about that, but I think this is a great trigger for what I'm using it for. I'm not doing competition shooting, so I might upgrade the trigger. Again, they recommend not upgrading the trigger on this. I know you guys have had some success with that. I think I would probably like to try doing that on this one. So something to consider. But that's probably enough of you guys listening to me yammer about these two guns. So enjoy, and let me know what you think.